Welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast, where Kay Nicole delivers a daily dose of inspiration by discussing passion, purpose, and struggle with people who are living their best life doing what they love. Here's Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I'm so excited. I have Bryn Collins. She is a psychologist and an author, and I am in love with her book. So, hey Bryn, welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast.
Well, thank you, Nicole.
Yes, I can't wait.
Or should I say, oh, hell yes?
Exactly. Oh hell yes. So I want to start by talking a little bit about you, your career, and then we'll go into the book and then just some things that, I want to expand upon.
Terrific.
All right. So when did you make the decision that psychology was the path you wanted to take?
Wow, that's a great question. I had been doing a lot of human resources things for a major oil company and for a sub-project that we were doing. And when that project came to the end, I kind of was ready to leave New York and come back to Minnesota. And so I came back to Minnesota and was seeing a therapist who said, "You'd make a good therapist."
Wow.
And so I went to school, and that's how it all started.
Wow. So you were like already in a career and doing your thing, and then someone suggested that to you and you just made the change.
Well, I was ready to make a change, yeah.
Okay. All right. So as a psychologist, what is your overall goal for every patient that comes into your office? If there's anything that you want them to leave with, what is one thing that you try to, give them?
I want people to feel heard. I can offer suggestions about, well, maybe if you did this, you'd have a different outcome, or, encourage people to find their own suggestions about ways to get a different outcome. But mostly I think people don't feel heard by anyone.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the immediacy of the problem as it is the immediacy of feeling in a vacuum.
Yeah. Okay. So as a psychologist, what is, and this is going to be like a strange question, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask it. What don't you delve into? Like, I interviewed this psychologist once, and she was doing like work with women who were like victims of abuse and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could never do that because I just wouldn't be able to take it mentally, emotionally. And she said, well, when you go into this field, you kind of know what you can and cannot, do. So for you,
right.
What is something that you don't touch? You can't, it's just not your thing.
I don't do addictions work.
Okay.
I have a somewhat different approach to addictions than the standard 12-step, which is really strong here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And my belief is that addictions are a symptom of something else going on rather than a primary diagnosis. And so I don't do addictions work. I will work with people who are survivors of abuse or who are currently in abusive relationships to help them get out. And people who are under heavy pressure in their lives for one reason or another. But I don't do addictions work.
Okay. So how do you take care of yourself so that you are able to help your patients?
One of the most important things I learned in grad school was how one takes care of oneself. And that is by not absorbing other people's stuff.
Mm.
You have to make a conscious effort not to be with you don't want to join them. You want to be with them, but not join them in their struggle.
Yeah.
Because then you lose objectivity. And once you've lost objectivity, you're of no use at all to a client. They already have somebody or a bunch of people who are not objective. So my responsibility to my clients is to be objective and separate from their issue, and yet involved in it in as an intellectual exercise rather than an emotional exercise.
Okay. And do you do anything else like maybe yoga or, I don't know, meditation or long walks in the park? Just, I don't know, anything else for yourself just to stay healthy, alert, and bright?
I do a lot of reading,
Okay.
both in the field, and I'm a big fan of fiction where action happens.
Okay.
And I watch movies, and I try not to bring the office home.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, of course, I have my office phone is a cell phone, so I bring it with me everywhere I go. But if, for example, a client calls, and I will deal with whatever they're dealing with at that moment, and when I hang up, I deal with myself that I'm done.
Yeah. So do you have your own practice or do you work alongside with someone else's practice?
No, I have my own practice.
Okay.
I have been in a group practice before, but I've had my own practice for over 20 years.
And in having your own practice, what has been the biggest struggle in building your career and just being an entrepreneur?
Interesting question. Most people, I think, would say getting referrals. I've never had any trouble getting referrals and maintaining client relationships. I think the biggest struggle I have is probably balancing my time.
Yeah, that's everybody's struggle.
Yes, I think so.
Tell us what you love the most about what you do.
Seeing people get it, seeing the light go on. And it invariably happens at some point during therapy. Is suddenly, generally what happens is the client will say something, and then they hear themselves. And they hear themselves differently than they ever have before. And I can watch the process. I can see the process happening of the light going on. I love that. I just love that.
So what is the most challenging part of your day?
Most challenging is always the client who aggressively does not want an answer. What they want is, oh, poor baby, and oh, that must really be awful to go through that, and other expressions of sympathy. And what they don't want is empathy. They don't want me to say, wow, that's really hard. What are you doing to take care of yourself? That's not what they want. What they want is for me to go, oh, you poor thing. I'm not in the oh, you poor thing business. That's the friend. And I'll tell people that.
Nice. I like it, Bryn. So I was so excited when I first introduced Bryn. I didn't say anything about her book, but we're going to get into the book. So the book we're going to talk about is The Toxic Parents Survival Guide. And before we delve into the book that I want to talk about, because she wrote another book as well that I was like, man, I really want to talk about that book too. But it all kind of connects. So what made you focus on difficult relationships?
Well, it's so much a part of what I see in my practice is the outcome of difficult relationships. People whose relationship, for example, with their parents, because of this book, or their kids, or their spouses, or their friends, where they just can't figure out how to make those relationships comfortable and workable. And instead, they're working hard to overturn their own best interests. Yeah.
So how did you learn to master your emotions and to be an effective communicator?
The therapist who suggested I might be a good therapist she is an exceptional human being. And as well as being a mentor and now a friend after, my God, more than 20 years, was just a spectacular therapist. And she has nailed me, or she forced me to nail myself right to the wall and figure out what it was I was doing that was against my own best interest.
Okay. So what was the deciding factor for you to start writing these books?
Well, interestingly enough, that therapist said something to me about writing the first book. She said, well, you've got all these approaches and philosophical positions. Why aren't you writing a book? And I thought, good question. Since I had already written many novels, I've had, 12 novels published.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm what happens when you don't medicate a hyperactive kid.
Hey, it's not bad. Not a bad thing. That is amazing. All right. So you wrote a book called Emotional Unavailability, and then the one,
Right.
The Toxic Parent Survival Guide, recognizing, understanding, and freeing yourself from these difficult relationships. Now, I love this book because I feel like it transcends surviving toxic parents and extends to people on a whole, because when you're reading it, you just take from it like, okay, yeah, this might have stemmed from someone having a parent like this, but then it kind of, grew. This person took on these same behaviors, and now they're that way, and they're in, the world, and they connect with other people and have relationships, and it kind of just, extends into all different parts of life.
Exactly.
So that's
We
what
can. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say that's what made me like really fall in love with like everything you had to say in this book.
Well, bless your little heart. One of the things I was thinking is this book came from experience, and not that my parents were toxic. I think a lot of parents are not toxic in the sense of dramatically toxic, but rather, how do I want to say this? Rather unapproachable, which that distance makes them less than effective as parents.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I took that little test, what is your mindset? And my mindset is joyful person. And
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I do agree that I am a joyful person, but I also, my goal in my life is to really become the best me that I can be an exceptional communicator, and really solve problems and not add to them, and work on how I receive people and how they receive me. So I'm constantly working on those things because I've identified my weak points, right?
Those are fantastic goals.
Yeah, I really think that it's important, So as I'm going through this book, I'm like writing down stuff like, oh my God, I need this. Yes, this is what I need. One of the things you talk about is, am I reacting or responding? I feel like a lot of times, depending on what comes at me, and this is like with a relationship with my husband, sometimes with my mom, sometimes with friends, someone might say something and it triggers an emotion, and that emotion makes you immediately react rather than respond. And I want to learn how to respond, So I really love that.
Responding is learning how to take a breath before you say something. So often what happens is someone will trigger with a statement they make, and rather than processing that and putting it in context, we just react. And usually reactions of that type are negative.
Yep.
And so learning how to respond, which is thoughtfulness in the process, rather than react, gives us time to think through what someone is saying and figure out where we stand on the process, and then respond rather than react.
Yes, I love that part where you talk about the why, like not saying why, or what the why, why, because you can follow that up with something negative. Yeah, the forbidden word. So you might say, "Why the hell?" or "What?" Why the something else.
So, yes.
Right. So it's not good to say that, and that's so true. And I love the help me understand. That is
Help me understand is a great tool to use in order to get a response that you can actually use from someone rather than a reaction. Rather than saying what or why, saying, help me understand your position on this. help me understand how you see this, not only makes you pay attention, it makes them pay attention to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. It's just amazing. And then let's talk a little bit about the emotions. Mad, sad, scared, glad. Using these words to kind of, maybe start off a conversation about how you're feeling about something.
Well, those are the basic building blocks of emotion: mad, glad, sad, and scared. All other emotions are a subset or combination of one or more of those four. And so when you're talking about your feelings, especially with someone who may not be very familiar with feelings, using that basic language is almost universally understood, even by people who don't necessarily feel their feelings. They get what you mean. If you say, I felt scared when, or I felt sad when, whereas if you say, oh, I was really irritated by, that's kind of vague, because what's one person's irritation is another person's temper tantrum.
Okay. Also, good boundaries. Now, sometimes people don't know how to identify boundaries.
Boundaries are those behaviors and words and thoughts that create an appropriate wall between us and other people. I think everybody has at one time or another experienced someone who has poor boundaries or is boundaryless. And they will ask you the most personal questions or take your business in the street because they don't know they shouldn't. They don't understand that there's a rule about where there's a line. To them, everything is wide open. And so people who have poor boundaries tend to put us in embarrassing positions. People with good boundaries know better.
Yes. And in the book, she goes into people with good boundaries, and she lists out some of the, things that you do. Are clear in their various roles in life. Keep private information private. Use clear communication. Are assertive, not aggressive. And it goes on and on. This book is amazing, people. You need to get it. So,
bless your little heart.
No, I really think that this is so important because I feel like sometimes people just don't realize how they come off. Maybe they don't understand certain things about themselves and how to communicate. And maybe if they read something and then they can identify some of their own behaviors in the book, they can see, oh my God, this is not right, and then they'll start to work on changing it. And maybe that will bring them to a better place in their life, So
that would be a wonderful outcome from someone reading the book.
I think so. I love that you say no is a complete sentence that creates good boundaries. Because I feel like a lot of people have trouble with that word no. And they do. Yeah, I keep seeing memes. They're so funny online that says something like, I'm not going to lie anymore about why I have to hang up the phone. I'm just hanging up. Like we're always trying to come up with an excuse, for something that we want to do or can't do, instead of just saying, hey, you know what? I don't have time for this today and I can't do it. And, so I love that. I love no.
Well, no is a wonderful word, and learning how to say it so that it doesn't come off as aggressive or harsh is a really important thing. No is an easy word to say, and yet many people think of it as a negative. And it's not negative, it's just no. No, I don't plan to do that. No, I'm not interested in this.
Right.
It clarifies, it's a clarifier. And yet people are kind of afraid of it.
Yeah. Don't be afraid, people. Say no, keep it real, and, just move on. It's okay.
That's right.
So
exactly.
Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment.
Isn't that true?
Yes. I love that, because every experience, is there for something. So you learn from it. And, when you make a bad decision and you come out on the other side of it and you can go on to make better decisions, then hey, I've done this. It didn't work. This is what I should do. But on the other side of that, there are some people that continue to make the same bad judgments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's because they're not connecting the judgment with the consequent behavior. They don't see that dating a guy who's, let's say married and drug addicted, is a bad idea. They think, well, Paul was a bad idea, or Billy was a bad idea, but Jason won't be a bad idea, even though he has exactly the same behaviors. They're not connecting the dots.
Right. Yeah. You got to connect the dots, people. Tell us a little bit about reflective listening.
Reflective listening is when you are having a conversation with someone, and rather than just going ahead with an answer to a question or to a statement, what you do is say, I hear you say, and then repeat as closely as you can what the person has said. That clarifies for you that you are correctly interpreting them, and it also clarifies for them that they have been heard. People like to feel heard.
Yeah, I got to work on that, because I always screw up what someone said.
Well, you'll find repeating it as exactly as possible really makes it clear for you.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then emotional location. I love that. You have blamer, poor me, solver, fixer, and player.
Yes. And those 5 types, those 5 people, those 5 groups, 4 of the 5 are, and I'm putting air quotes around this, dysfunctional. Dysfunctional is a funny word. It's been overused and used wrongly so often that it's kind of lost its punch. And so I'm always kind of hesitant to say the word dysfunctional because it in some ways is meaningless. But for the sake of this conversation, dysfunctional means exactly what it sounds like, not functioning correctly. And so dysfunctional relationships are relationships that don't work the way they should. And dysfunctional language is language that does not communicate correctly what you're intending to say. And so what you want very much to do is to make certain that, as opposed to dysfunctional, your language is functional.
And just remember, people, the thing about this too is that when you learn how to manage yourself and be a more effective communicator, you teach these things to your children, and then you make them effective communicators. And, that's how we break the cycle of whatever happened when we were growing up or whatever we learned, So that's why this is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kids need to learn boundaries. Kids need to learn no as a complete sentence. And that no is not punitive. No is simply an answer, as is yes.
Absolutely. These are some of my favorite responses that I am really going to work on using in my day-to-day. Here's one. That's troubling. This really creates a problem for us. I love that. Right? Instead of saying, well, why the hell did you do that? Or, well, what are we supposed to do now? Or, this is perfect, people, because it doesn't, bring about hostility and aggression, right? It's just kind of
Right.
like a statement that says, hey, this is an issue. We're going to have something, that we need to solve here. We need to figure this out. I'm really disappointed to hear that. That's a good one.
Yes.
I'm sorry you feel that way. So yesterday, me and my husband, we've been together for almost 17 years and married it'll be 10 years this year. So
Good job.
yeah, right. So we went to the Justice of the Peace when we initially got married, and I've always wanted to have some sort of a celebration, wedding or whatever. So for our 10-year anniversary, we're having a little, ceremony, reception and whatever. So
Fun.
yeah, I'm so excited. So yesterday I went to talk to the florist about, just having flowers, and I really want to keep it minimal because I don't want to spend a lot of money. I just want to make it pretty, but I want to, keep the budget really, low. So I got a quote from the florist and I called my husband to tell him, how much it was. And he was like, well, I'm not paying for that. That's ridiculous. That's so expensive. Like, why are you spending that much money on something that's going to die? And I just started yelling. Right? What do you mean? So, and then I was going through this book and I was like, damn, I should have hit him with, I'm sorry you feel that way.
That is an exactly appropriate use for I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right? I'm sorry you feel that way, but I tried my best to keep this, at a minimal cost. But unfortunately, flowers are expensive and this is what it's going to cost. Right? And maybe we can talk about how we can pay for this together or something like that. Right?
Well, it's way more solution focused than
Exactly. Than just trying to go back and go back at him. And again, that's probably in what you say about respond appropriately and reacting instead of responding. So
Right.
I felt at that moment, I felt sad that one, he didn't take into consideration that I really tried to keep it, at a minimum. And two, that now he's saying this cost is all on you because you want something that's going to die and you want to pay this astronomical price for it, which I didn't think it was that much. It's really not, guys. It's like $1,000, maybe a little bit under, right? Flowers are expensive. So
flowers are expensive.
yeah. And I think that is a good compromise considering, how expensive flowers can be. But he's a guy, he doesn't know anything about it. And I felt sad at that moment. And then my sadness quickly went to anger. And then I was just reacting to what he was saying rather than responding. So I wanted to share that example with everyone just to show you how everything that's in Bryn's book relates to our daily life. Like, even though this book talks about toxic parents, it's just a daily, thing. Like, we go through these things daily with our spouses, our bosses, our children, our parents, everybody. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, and I think you make that's a very valid example.
Yeah. So
of
yeah.
truncated or miscommunication.
Right. Definitely. I wanted to talk a little bit about gaslighting. Can you quickly explain what gaslighting is? Like, I could keep you on this interview forever. I really could. You don't even understand how obsessed I am with this stuff.
I'm so honored. To a writer, an obsession with your book is a good thing.
Yes.
Gaslighting is that process by which someone changes the interpretation of reality to fit their agenda. In other words, for example, you and your spouse are having a discussion about the rent on a new place, and suddenly that changes and becomes about how you spend money And that changes and becomes about who you are as a person, reflected by money. Gaslighting is the process by which a conversation changes to become an attack.
Pay attention, people. Don't get gaslit.
Or if you're being gaslit, what you do is to say, this feels to me like we're changing the subject to make me the bad guy. And I don't think that that's what we're talking about. So can we please go back to talking about what we're talking about?
Right, the issue at hand.
Yes, because when it switches from the issue at hand to the person, that's not good.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, that can easily happen in an argument with a spouse, right? Because they always say, don't fight dirty. If you're having a discussion about something, stick to what you guys are talking about. Don't take it outside of, that topic. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Keep it narrow. I suggest that people write down what it is they're discussing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that way you can go back to the written down words and go, there's nothing in here about spending money. We're only talking about the rent on the new place. Can we afford it? Can we not afford it?
Right. Yeah, that's good. All right. So, expectations. I feel like expectations always trip me up, and I'm still learning to not expect anything from anyone, even when you're in a relationship with them. And that could be a friendship, your marriage, your relationship with your parents and children, whatever. Like, have no expectations, because when you don't, I feel like you're safer, because people will always disappoint. That's what I've learned in life. So I found this expectations section to be really interesting. I just want to read this quick sentence. Relationships are easily damaged by unmatched and unmet expectations. Right?
Yes.
Facts. Those are facts.
Those are facts.
Yes. So
people set themselves up with expectations that are not rational or reasonable. There are some expectations that are perfectly reasonable. I expect my husband to come home after work. If he's not coming home, I expect him to call and tell me when he will be home. And his expectation is that I will respond appropriately and not get all crazy and freaked out if he's going out for a drink with the guys and after work. And it's there are good expectations on both sides. When you set yourself up, it's for example, if I wouldn't tell him that I had the expectation that he would call. And so then when he doesn't call, and I get all mad and start blaming him and calling him all kinds of unflattering things because he didn't live up to my expectation, which he didn't know about.
So what about when you so when my husband goes out, I always say, just call me when you get there and call me when you're on your way home. I just want to know that you arrive safely and that you're on your way home, so that when you get here, you don't freak me out by, coming in the house late or whatever, or I just know to expect you at a certain time. So if something happens, God forbid, I know that you were on your way home. So is that an expectation on my part? And if he doesn't follow through with that, how do you address that?
Well, I think you have to have an agreement in advance about expectations like that.
Okay.
You can't, what it amounts to is you don't want to set him up to fail. And if you have not come to an agreement between the two of you about when certain calls would be made, then you're setting him up for unmet expectations, even though he didn't know about them.
Right.
And you're setting yourself up, and neither one is good for you.
See? So have an agreement. That's good. Yeah, we definitely have that agreement. So I expect.
And once you have that agreement, it's reasonable for you to have the expectation that he will meet that agreement.
Right. Okay. So simple, right? So simple.
Well, yeah, it's usually those things that trip us up that are simple.
I know, but like the way you were explaining it makes it such a simple thing. Like, don't just have these expectations of people that they don't even know about. Sit down, have a conversation, say what you would like to happen, make sure that they are okay with fulfilling whatever it is that you expect or would like to happen. And then once you have an agreement, then, you know, if it falters somewhere along the line, then you have a leg to stand on to have a conversation about why this, you know, expectation wasn't met. But to just expect someone to do something because that's what you would do, and then when they don't do it and then you're mad and whatever, that becomes the problem. It's just like I was having a conversation with my mom yesterday, and she said on Christmas I took over the TV and was watching foolishness, and she just wanted to watch a movie. But she never said anything. So I said, well, you didn't say, hey guys, let's watch a movie. So how are we supposed to know you wanted to watch a movie? Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
exactly. That's setting you up.
Exactly. She set me up. So there you go.
Yes. And I don't think it was her intention to set you up.
No. But, you know.
And in most cases, that's true. It's not someone's intention to set you up. It comes about because there hasn't been the proper amount of communication.
Absolutely.
A lot of things come back to communication.
Yes. Communication is like the foundation for everything, right?
Exactly.
So I love resentment. Not I love resentment, but I love your section about resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Love that.
Yep. Resentment eats you alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it generally is not, it's generally because there is not a paradigm in your world for what to do with that resentment. And so it just eats at you from the inside out and makes you crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that resentment comes from also maybe a little bit of having certain expectations that were never, you know, brought to the forefront, or maybe, I don't know, expectations that were discussed and not met that eventually turn into you being resentful because you don't feel like, you know, you got what you wanted or you got what you deserved. And then it kind of morphs into this other thing.
Well, and that's exactly where the origin of most resentments is unmet expectations. And generally, those are the unspoken expectations. Like, he should know that I want such and such. And, well, maybe he doesn't. Don't assume that somebody has you all figured out. Better to explain yourself and have them go, yeah, I know that, rather than to do something expecting them to respond in the way you expect when they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that is the truth. All right, so I want to end this segment on positivity, affirmations, saying good things to yourself. I love the affirmation section because I feel like we don't always give ourselves credit or pat ourselves on the back, and I really think it's important to do that. So give us your best advice on affirmations.
Learning how to look in the mirror and say you're terrific and mean it is maybe one of the hardest things I ask clients to do. And if you need an example, once we finish talking, go in the bathroom, look in the mirror, look yourself dead in the eye, and say you're terrific. And if you can do that, you're terrific.
Yeah.
Most of us can't. Most of us get there and either look away, look down, or can't get the words out, because we've taught as part of our cultural conditioning that you're not supposed to say good things about yourself, that makes you an egomaniac. Saying something that's real and truthful about yourself that's positive, it doesn't make you an egomaniac, it makes you positive. I know I'm smart. Because I know I'm smart, I do things that reflect the fact that I'm confident in my intelligence.
Nice.
And so live my life in a very authentic way. People who say, oh, well, I'm not that smart, who are that smart, are denying their who-ness and taking away from themselves rather than making a positive contribution.
Yeah. Sometimes I say that, like someone will say, oh, you're smart. I'm like, I'm not that smart, but I do okay, But I think that maybe we do that because we're measuring ourselves up against something else, which you shouldn't, right?
Right.
And that's the thing.
Life is not a competition.
Right. So I might not be as smart as this person, but I'm smart within my own right. And that's okay. Love that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So do you feel like you are doing your purpose work? And if so, what specifically do you think that is?
Yes, I think I'm doing my purpose work. And I think that's the opportunity to share these ideas with people to help them find a different path for themselves. I have long said these books come through me, not necessarily from me, but through me. And because of that, I think that there is some truth out there that I am able to pass on that makes people's lives different or better.
Yeah.
And including mine.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, I love this book. Last year I had an interview where I was like this, right? And it was another author who wrote this great book. And I'm having that year again this year. Like, you're like my second interview for the year. And I am just like, this is going to be my favorite interview for the whole year. I could just feel it.
Oh, bless your heart.
And I'm definitely going to purchase this book and give it away to one of my listeners because that's how much I love this book. And I think that somebody else needs to have it. So definitely I'm doing that, guys. So look out on my Instagram page for the contest because someone needs this book. Like, it's going to be life-changing. I really feel that. So this is the Oh Hell No podcast. And oh hell no, those are the moments in life that we have that, just kind of help us along the way, right? Because I feel like you always learn something from your oh hell no moment. It's a moment where someone says something, asks you to do something, or presents a situation that it might make you uncomfortable. It might be something that's so shocking that you didn't even expect. And that's what an oh hell no moment is. And an oh hell no moment doesn't stop us. It just is something that happens along the journey. So that's the whole concept of my oh hell no name for this podcast. And I always ask my guests to share an oh hell no moment. But this year I'm putting a little twist on it. And I'm asking my guests to share an oh hell no moment that has taught you a lesson or changed your perspective on something.
Wow, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
Come on, Bryn. This is not a quiz.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've had some oh hell no moments.
I have had plenty of oh hell no moments. And one that I can think of very immediately is when I was living in New York. I assumed, and you know where this is going, I assumed that a friend of mine and I were going to follow through and do something in particular. So I built an entire plan around us doing this without actually talking to her about it.
Mm.
And needless to say, it all blew up in my face. And I was surprised. She was surprised. It actually damaged our relationship for a while because I hadn't been clear with her what I was thinking because I just assumed she'd figured it out. And what that oh hell moment taught me was don't assume people can read your mind. And it's funny, I say that out loud, and people go, well, yeah, but stop and take a look at your behavior and see if that really is well, yeah, or not. In general, it's not. In general, people don't understand the oh hell moments that happen in their lives.
Yeah.
And that certainly has been my case, was I didn't understand until later how much of a violation it was for me to just assume that Connie was in on the thinking for that.
Right.
Taught me a lot.
Good.
That's what Oh Hell Moment's job is.
Yep.
Teach us.
Exactly. I love that you said that. So it has been such a pleasure having you on this podcast. Let me tell you, you know already that I love your book. I love the work you're doing, and I think that you are amazing. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And please tell people where they can purchase your books and how we can connect with you if you are on any of the social media platforms.
Well, I have my website, bryncollins.com, and so you can certainly connect with me there. I think I'm on Facebook, but I'm not sure, with Emotional Unavailability. And you can get the book from any of the major bookstores, online, or if there still is one in your neighborhood, in person. It's at all the Barnes & Nobles in this area, so I assume it's at Barnes & Nobles in other areas, or online.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show.